YouTube world. I am have been extremely busy, like everybody else, running around getting everything done for the holidays, and I have neglected to answer some emails, and I feel bad about that. And I always see the questions in my email and say I'll get to that tomorrow. I'll get to that tomorrow. But I've decided to answer some questions here while I'm stuck out chauffeuring the family around because, of course, being right after Christmas, everybody has stuff to return, right? So Savanna sent me an email. It sounds like she's very educated. She has I believe, a bachelor's in kinesiology and with a minor in, what was it, sports, a minor in something, and she said, but who's watching, which is absolutely true. Nobody cares what our minors are. You know, it's important to us, and I always work those into resumes and whatnot, but just like GPAs, nobody cares what kind of grades you get, right? C's get degrees is the truth. So Savanna just wrote in to say that she's you know, like most of us, trying to figure out at an early age what we want to do for a living, what career we want. What will make us happy in a career choice while also making us enough money to pay the bills and hopefully even get ahead a little bit. And so she's tried several different things. She's tried, looks like physical therapy and some vet stuff, sports psych, osteopathic was on her radar. And you know what, Savannah, that's completely normal. It's really hard to nail down one thing, right? Because we're complex, we're complicated species. We like a lot of different things. But Savannah thinks that she has decided on X-ray. And the first question she asked was, since she already has a bachelor's, does she have to go back to school again for X-ray, or can she just get their certificate? And I think where there's confusion, the waters are kind of muddy in that area. So let me just make it clear for you. In order to get licensed to, the common phrase is to shoot X-rays. But in order to get licensed to administer radiation to a patient, in order to get that license, it only, here in the United States, it only comes from the ARRT, and they are at arrt.org. And in order to sit for that license, you have to complete didactic or classroom work, and you also have to complete a certain number of clinical hours. I want to say it was like 1,600 or 1,800, and because of both of those requirements, you have to go back to school, and in that school program, you will get the didactic in the classroom, and they will set you up on your clinical rotations. That's where you always hear about the clinical rotations. And after you complete all that, that's when you are allowed, when you graduate that program, then you have met the requirements to go sit for the board exams. And but this leads into, well, I guess where the confusion on that part sometimes comes is people, you can get a degree. Typically, just about all X-ray programs are 2 years. You will find some that are slightly less, but for the most part, they're all 2 years. And you should get an associate's upon graduation from the program because it's 2 years, right? That's what I got. I went to school back in 2003, went to a 2-year program, got a associate's of radiography. Same thing when I went back to school for ultrasound. It was a 2-year program, had to do the didactic classroom stuff and clinical rotations, and that allowed me to sit for the ardms.org licensure. But some places, I guess, don't give you an associate's. They just give you a certificate of completion. Like I did that when I took phlebotomy before I did X-ray. Phlebotomy was like a 2 or 3 month course. You take a few classes or whatever, and when you graduate, you get a certificate of completion. So I guess there are some X-ray schools that just give you a certificate of completion versus an associate's degree in radiography. And I guess I would say if you had to make a choice between those two, you would want the associate so that you could build on it in the future. You could go back to school, build on that associate's to make it a bachelor's. And there are a lot of bridge programs, they call them, to take you from associates to bachelors and bachelors to masters, etc. So to answer your first question is yes, you're going to have to go back to school, and I have lots of videos and posts about how to pick a good school, how to give a good interview, what they're going to ask you, why they're asking you, what they're looking for in the answers, and so on. And then the second question was, it sounds like maybe you might be interested in other modalities, which I think is part of what's appealing to you. It's what appealed to me as well, is you can go into X-ray or come out of X-ray school and get a job as an X-ray tech, making pretty decent money. But from there, the doors open, right? You've got CT, MRI, ultrasound, nuke med, interventional, DEXA, mammo. I mean, it's not endless, but it sure feels endless sometimes, especially when you're trying to find coverage. But your question number 2 is, should you jump? Should you leap over X-ray and go into something else? And that didn't used to be possible. That's a super common question, because who wants to waste time, right? Who wants to sit in X-ray for 5 years or whatever, waiting to get into an ultrasound program or an MRI program or whatever? But now, and it has been this way for a few years now, you can actually get into programs like MRI and ultrasound without even having an X-ray license. And it didn't used to be that way. When I went to school, you had to be a licensed radiographer to get into the ultrasound program. And there was no MRI program, no MRI. And MRI, and this is a whole other topic, but MRI is not a 2-year school like X-ray and ultrasound and nuclear medicine are. CT is a couple of classes, MRI is a couple of classes, DEXA is no classes, interventional really is no, that's an on-the-job training type of a modality switch. So yes, if you feel like you would rather do an advanced modality, I would jump straight into that advanced modality. Now some people will say, well, some people will be irritated because they didn't have that option. I see this all the time on our Facebook group, which I encourage you to join if you're not on there already. But we have a Facebook group called the Radiologic Technologist Group. And people say, well, if you know X-ray before you know MRI, you'll understand things better. Or if you know X-ray before you know ultrasound, you'll have a better picture of how it all works. Well, it's kind of true. I mean, the more you know, right? But X-ray has nothing to do with ultrasound, and really X-ray has nothing to do with MRI. Completely different technologies. So it's not really necessary. Now, if you want to go into CT, you're going to have to go X-ray first, because you have to have a radiographer's license, because CT gives the same type of radiation, right, as X-ray. I mean, you want to get all technical, it's set up a different way, but it's still administering radiation to the patient. So if you want to go CT, you're going to have to go X-ray first. But if you want to go MRI, you can do that all by itself now. If you want to go ultrasound, which I highly recommend, you can do that all by itself now. Interventional, you have to have an X-ray license. Mammo, you have to have an X-ray license. DEXA, same thing. So it really depends on what advanced modality you're interested in. But absolutely, if you know that there's something that appeals to you more, just try to go straight for that. Now, one plus to going X-ray first is that you're more marketable, right? If you're applying to a hospital, and let's say you decide that ultrasound is the way you want to go, and you go there first, and you apply to a hospital, If things like COVID hit or whatever, machine goes down or whatever, and they start telling techs, go home, we don't have any work for you right now. If you have another modality, you can go work in that modality, right? So like I had 4 modalities at one point. I was doing X-ray, CT, ultrasound, and MRI. And so I didn't ever have to worry about hours. I could always go anywhere I wanted to pick up to pick up hours. But you can have a full career and a full schedule with one modality. Like say you choose ultrasound and you go to work at a hospital and there's only 3 of you, 3 ultrasound techs running 2 or 3 machines. They got to stagger you on the different shifts and all that stuff. But I always encourage people, if you're really concerned about the money, be on call somewhere else if you're in a populated enough area. Get your 312s, work them at your hospital nearby, and then be PRN somewhere else, a doctor's office doing OB, whatever, and pick up 1 shift a week, 1 shift a month, whatever, so that you have more than one option, so that when things might get stretched a little thin, you have somewhere else to go. But I hope that helps, Savanna. Sorry it took me like a good week to get an answer to you. But I'm always happy to answer these questions. It's just easier for me to do it on video form. Plus, I hope by putting it out there that other people with similar questions will see it and read it and have answers for them out there. So make sure you check out the blog if you haven't been there yet. It's the radiologictechnologist.com blog, and of course this YouTube channel. And hope it's been helpful. If you have any more questions, send them to me by email. There's a contact form on my blog, and have a great day.